He's going to learn one of these days, I can tell. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radhe Shyam ki jai. Gopi Janamala Girivardhari. Gopi Janamala Jaya Gopi Janamala Girivardhari. Gopi Janamala Nanda Bhaja Janaranjana. Nanda Bhaja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Lord Premanandi. Jayam Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Patibhadakacharya, Astadars of the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Shilesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti, Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Shri Kaho, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Shri Gadadhar, Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar Gopa Gopinath Shamakund, Radhakund, Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Mathura Dham ki jai, Navadvip Dham ki jai, Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Jagannath Swami ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Srimati Tosi Maharani ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, glories to Sri Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Nanda Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarani. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. We're reading from the second canto today. We're on chapter 3, which is entitled Pure Devotional Service. We're on text 11. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Let's chant together. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamaśloke bhaktir bhavati naisaki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto The personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and Srila Prabhupada, the translator and commentator. By regular attendance on classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay, text 11. Etavan eva yajatam. Etavan eva yajatam. Etavan eva yajatam. Etavan eva yajatam. Iha nishreya sodaya. Iha nishreya sodaya. Iha nishreya sodaya. Bhagavat Achalo Bhavo. Bhagavat Yachalo Bhavo. Yad Bhagavat Sangataha. Yad Bhagavat Sangataha. Etavan eva yajatam. Iha nishreya sodayaha. Bhagavat Yachalo Bhavo. Yad Bhagavat Sangataha. Please chant. Etavan eva yajatam. Iha nishreya sodaya. Bhagavat Yachalo Bhavo. Yad Bhagavat Sangataha. Radhesham ki jai. Krishna Balaram Shri Gaura ki jai. Anyone else would like? Etavan eva yajatam. Iha nishreya sodaya. Bhagavat Yachalo Bhavo. Yat Bhagavat Sangataha. Etavaneva yajatam. Iha nishreya sodaya. Bhagavat Yachalo Bhavo. Yad Bhagavat Sangataha. Etavan. All these different kinds of worshippers. Eva. Certainly. Yajatan. While worshipping. Iha. In this life. Nishreyasa. The highest benediction. Udaya. Development. Bhagavati. Unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Achala. Unflinching. Bhava. Spontaneous attraction. Yat. Which. Bhagavat. I need some light, if that's okay with you. Okay? I need it over my head. There's one more. Can you put one more on over my head, please? Thanks. That's all right. There you go. That's fine. Thank you. Bhagavat, the pure devotee of the Lord. Sangata. Association. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. All the different kinds of worshippers of multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction, unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. I'm going to say that once more. All the different kinds of worshippers of multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction, unflinchingly fixed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. Omagyanatimirandasya jananjana salakaya chakshur umilitam jena tasmai shugurave namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master and various devotees opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge, and I'm very grateful for that. And I beg for service life after life. Hare Krishna. So just putting this verse in perspective before I get to the purport. It's a rather long purport. We're going to do some of the purport today. But in perspective, okay, so all the different, the verse is saying, all the different kinds of worshipers are multi-demigods. If you remember, if you were here, and some of you haven't been here, so previous 10 verses, or previous 9 verses, not including yesterday's verse, but the previous 9 verses, or the first 9 verses of this chapter, are explaining about if you worship this demigod, you can get all your desires fulfilled, which was yesterday's verse. You can get all your desires fulfilled in so many different ways, but ultimately you get your desire fulfilled, the real desire in the heart, by worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one worships the different demigods, you get certain results. And if you worship this person, you can get that result. If you worship that person, you have that desire, you have certain things. So this is the theme. It's a theme of the Srimad Bhagavatam and of all the Vedic literatures, actually, that different activities have different results. And it's brought up very often in the Bhagavatam, and bringing us to the understanding that for the highest benediction, if we understand that the highest benediction is beyond our immediate bodily gratification, a more permanent result of happiness would be to focus in on who we really are beyond this temporary existence, in this temporary world, in this temporary body. Instead of trying to become happy in this temporary existence, real happiness only comes when we're connected with our spiritual existence, which is eternal, beyond the influence of the modes of nature, etc., etc. Srimad Bhagavatam, in this canto, second canto, in the 10th chapter, the first verse of the 10th chapter, talks about the different subject matters of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10 different subject matters of Bhagavatam. It goes, Atra sargo vishargasta stanam poshanam utaya manvantaresh anukata nidrodho muktir ashraya. So Sukadeva Goswami is explaining the different themes in this Mahapurana Bhagavatam. There's 10 themes. The creation of the universe, which comes up many times. The sub-creation, which is Lord Brahma, what he does with those ingredients. Planetary systems, protection by the Lord, creative impetus, the changes of Manu, and this topic, Isha Anukata, the science of God. This is the theme that's being presented here, the science of God realization. Returning home back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum. So this is a theme that comes up throughout the Bhagavatam. Focus in. Here's all this information about the creation of the universe, etc., who we are, different personalities and different incarnations of the Lord. Focus in on who you really are beyond this body. And the rest I'll tell you in a bit. So I'll start on the purport. Srila Prabhupada's purport. All the living entities in different statuses of life within the material creation, beginning from the first demigod Brahma down to the small ant, are conditioned under the laws of material nature, or the external energy of the Supreme Lord. And, in fact, Lord Brahma, and Sarga is creation, Visharga is Lord Brahma's creation, after he's got the ingredients that are supplied by the Supreme Lord. Lord Brahma takes those ingredients and he sculpts or outlines or provides the background for the material existence, how the living entities in different gradations of life can fulfill their desires, etc., etc. Now, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so when Lord Brahma creates, when he begins his process of creation in the material world, the first thing that he creates, there's five things that he creates. It's not the living entities. It's the different illusions that a living entity falling from the spiritual world becomes covered by these 5 different illusions. So first he creates the illusions. fear of death, or identification with the body, fear of death, illusions like that. Frustration after anger after frustration of your desire. All of those illusions are created first. Then the living entity, the pure living entity, enters into that atmosphere. It's a hard job to get out of that illusion created by Lord Brahma. And then there's the modes of nature and the influence. So that's what Prabhupada's referring to here. Everybody's conditioned here in the material world. But Prabhupada says, the living entity in his pure state of the living entity in his pure state is conscious of the fact that he is part and parcel of the Lord. But when he is thrown into the material world on account of his desire to lord it over material energy, he becomes conditioned by the three modes of material nature and thus struggles for existence for the highest benefit. That sums up our day-to-day struggle. It's a struggle because the illusory energy is created first, and we're all subjected to it, no matter how elevated we might think we are. And originally, the real you, the real I, the real spirit soul that's inhabiting the body, that we are conscious of our position. But when we develop that desire not to serve Krishna, but to try to gratify ourselves as the most important person instead of Krishna, then there's two covering potencies that cover the living entity, two more covering potencies. The covering potency is covered with illusion, and then the throwing into the material world. And I'm temporarily forgetting, what's those terms called? Avaranatmika, and the other one? Something or other. Anyway, two potencies that cover us and throw us into the material world. This struggle for existence is something like following the will-o'-the-wisp under the spell of material enjoyment. All plans for material enjoyment, either by worship of different demigods as described in previous verses of this chapter, or by modernized advancement of scientific knowledge without the help of God or demigod, are illusory only. For despite all such plans of happiness, the conditioned living being within the compass of material creation can never solve the problems of life, namely birth, death, old age, and disease. And this is one of Srila Prabhupada's so attractive features, is that he just says everything so clearly, so succinctly, that even though I, with my false ego, want to try to find a way to escape his clear explanation how I can't be happy here, it's very clear. And in one sense, it's kind of painless. It's so clear that it's painless, that you can't be happy here. I'm thinking this in the previous sentence reminds me of the 15th chapter of the Gita, where Krishna starts off the chapter talking about the upside down banyan tree, how this material world is just a reflection of the spiritual world. So there's the real banyan tree, meaning the spiritual world. A tree really exists in the spiritual world, but a tree reflected if the tree is on the bank of a river or the edge of a lake, let's say, so the tree's reflected in the lake upside down. The trunk, the reflected tree, the trunk of the tree appears to be the highest part of the tree, and the leaves of the tree are the lowest part of the tree in the reflection. So when in that chapter, 15th chapter, Krishna explains that the living entity is like a little bird that's trying to enjoy the different fruits of fruits and leaves of that tree, and he's jumping and moving from different branches and branches, trying to become happy by satisfying his desires in a religious sense, by following the Vedic scriptures, but they're only bringing him different types of fruits. They're only bringing him, sometimes the fruits are ripe and sweet and tasty, and sometimes the fruits are bitter and pungent and sour and terrible and poisonous. So by trying to enjoy the different allurements of material nature, where the living entity is only getting more and more entangled in the cycle of birth and death, and further away from the original source of the tree of the spiritual world. That's what he's talking about. So Prabhupada continues, the history of the universe is full of such plan makers. And many kings and emperors come and go, leaving a plan-making story only. So succinct, no? So many people have different, some of us don't have particular grandiose plans to conquer the universe and make everyone subordinate. But we have our little desires that keep us entangled. But some people in more so-called elevated positions, they have desires to, conquer the universe, or conquer all the countries in the world, or certain countries in the world, or whatever they have, and they make their endeavor, and they might achieve some success for some time, and then they're gone. Just like when Srila Prabhupada would see that when in France, in Paris, when he saw the statue of Napoleon, he said, where is he now? He wanted to conquer the world, and he's considered a great hero. Where is he now? He said the same thing to Ambarish too. Where's Mr. Ford now? And it was in their first meeting. But anyway, so they have so many plans, so many endeavors, and et cetera, and endeavor so arduously to accomplish them, and may achieve some success, but for a few years only, and then it's gone. And then the real opportunity of the human form of life is missed, and they leave a plan-making story only. So nice. But the prime problems of life remain unsolved despite all such endeavors by such plan makers. There's one. So simultaneously, participating in Srimad Bhagavatam study of this third canto with Dhruva Maharaj and Samapriya, and so we're on the story of Lord Varaha. So you're going to have to bear with me till you see the connection between this point and the story of Lord Varaha, but hopefully it'll become clear in a minute or two. So the story of the situation of Lord Varaha's appearance, the previous what happened was, when Lord Brahma was in the early stages of creation, when he was creating the different planets and everything, and then he was creating different suns and prajapatis to propagate the living entities in the planetary systems. First he created the 4 Kumaras, and then he asked them to become householders and propagate, and they refused. So he was a little miffed by that, you could say, a little disturbed. But he continued on because he realized that they had the only excuse that one could have for not following the order of the spiritual master, because they had a higher purpose in life. So it was not considered an offense on their part not to follow the order of Brahma. So then the next person that was created was Swayambhuva Manu, and so he asked Swayambhuva Manu to create and to populate the earth, and he said, "Yes, Father, I am totally obligated and indebted to you, and will do whatever you want." And Lord Brahma was very relieved. But then Swayambhuva Manu said, "But where am I going to work? Because the earth has now fallen from its orbit, and it is fallen into the bottom of the Garbhodak ocean. So where am I going to propagate these people to live on?" And Lord Brahma was a little struck with wonder at that situation, and he thought about it for a long time, what to do. So here's the connection. So if at that particular point, when the earth is on the bottom of the ocean, Lord Brahma is beginning his thought process on what to do, how to lift the earth, let's just say, for the sake of this example, there were some other kings and emperors who would start a plan-making commission on how they were going to lift the earth. They would get a committee together to study how they're going to lift the earth. What could they come up with? something, but nothing comparative to what actually happened. So Lord Brahma, while he's thinking, all of a sudden, this little teeny object comes out of his nose. Now, like, what planning commission would have come up with an idea like that? Not only that, but that object that came out of his nose was not the ordinary human discharge. It was the Supreme Personality of God himself in the form of a little boar. As soon as it came out, he grew in size, and that's the perfect solution, because the boar can dig into dirty places and get things out of dirty places. So I just, somehow or other, because I'm reading them both at the same time, I thought of that, how the Plan-Making Commission wouldn't have any capacity to come close to a solution like that. Yet Lord Brahma, in his wisdom, in all his wisdom, he says, actually, I don't remember the beginning part of what he says, but he says, I don't know what to do, so let me therefore wait and see what plan Krishna has in store for us, how he will rectify this situation. And of course, then his solution wasn't just a useless waste of time and not just a plan-making commission only, but it was the perfect plan and the perfect solution. I just wanted to share that. Hare Krishna. Okay, back to the purport. Actually, human life is meant for making a solution to the problems of life. One can never solve such problems by satisfying the different demigods, by different modes of worship, or by so-called scientific advancement of knowledge without the help of God or the demigods. So this is the information of the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is giving us all this information. If you worship this demigod, you'll get this result. If you perform this type of yoga, perhaps if you reach perfection, you'll get different mystic powers. If you do this, you'll do that. But if you want the real solution to all the solutions to human life, get out of here. This isn't our real place. And worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that will bring you to the perfect solution. So one might say, after reading this Prabhupada's sentence here, one can never solve such problems of life by satisfying the different demigods. Then one might ask, well, then why is it mentioned in the Vedas? Why is it mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam? It's mentioned because, as we've all noticed, because none of us were born just yesterday, we're not all on the same page. Not everybody has the same desire. We're on different stages of development in our spiritual life. Some on very minimal stages, some not paying any attention to their spiritual life at all and trying to act for gratification in the material world. And even after repeated frustrations, still don't see, oh, I think I should change my attitude or change my focus in life. But anyway, Srimad Bhagavatam and the Vedic literatures give different proposals to people in different states of consciousness so that they can gradually elevate themselves. And that's our choice. And that was a nice, that's our choice. If we want to gradually elevate ourselves, really gradually, there's different really gradual processes like the Karma Kanda section, which is like this demigod worship and sacrifice for gradual elevation. That's the gradual elevation. Or one can take what in ISKCON term we call the Prabhupada elevator. By directly taking to the process of bhakti, will actually take the elevator. Just like Akuti gave a nice example yesterday in her class about some people don't even want to take the elevator these days, but now we have the escalator. Just get on the escalator, and slowly, by hearing the holy name, by getting some prasadam or whatever, they're drawn to the top in a much more quicker way than by, the tedious, laborious task of step by step. But it's there, and this is again the theme of Vedic literature: choices. You make this choice, you'll get this result. You make that choice, you'll get that result. You have choices and they have different results. Apart from the gross materialists who care very little either for God or the demigods, the Vedas recommend worship different demigods for different benefits. And so the demigods are neither false nor imaginary. And I love this next sentence. The demigods are as factual as we are, but they are much more powerful due to their being engaged in the direct service of the Lord in maintaining the different departments of the universal government. So it was also mentioned in Akuti Prabhu's class yesterday about how, especially those of us born in Western, quote-unquote, culture, Western civilization, we don't have much concept of demigods. We don't have much concept, and that's the result of the impersonalist influence. We don't have much information or belief or faith that there's behind everything, there's a person. There's a person in charge of everything. Just like, and we can see it in our day-to-day life. Many of us have some dissatisfaction with this governmental official or that governmental official or the government in general, but still there's a person behind all of it, you know, that's supposedly in charge. But similarly, in the affairs of the universe, there's a person, or there are personalities behind the different functions of everything. And unfortunately, we've got to a point that we consider ourselves so advanced that we don't see that at all. Okay, continuing. Bhagavad Gita affirms this, and the different planets of the demigods are mentioned there, including one of the supreme demigod, Lord Brahma. The gross materialists do not believe in the existence of God or the demigods, nor do they believe that different planets are dominated by different demigods. They are creating a great commotion about reaching the closest celestial body, Chandraloka, or the moon. But even after much mechanical research, they have only very scanty information of the moon. And in spite of such false advertisement for selling land on the moon, or perhaps now you can get in one of Elon Musk's rockets and get a ticket to the moon, the puffed up scientists or gross materialists cannot live there, and what to speak of reaching other planets which they are unable even to count. However, that's always a key word, however. However, the followers of the Vedas have a different method of acquiring knowledge. And this is a very important point, too. They accept the statements of the Vedic literatures as authority in toto, as we have already discussed in Canto 1, and therefore they have full and reasonable knowledge of God and demigods and of their different residential planets situated within the compass of the material world and beyond the limit of the material sky. The most authentic Vedic literature accepted by the great Indian acharyas like Sankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, Vishnu Swami, Nimbarka, and Chaitanya, and studied by all important personalities of the world, is the Bhagavad Gita, in which the worship of the demigods and their respected residential planets are mentioned. And that's as far as we're supposed to go. There's still more to this purport, but that's the that's the end of my part on this purport, and tomorrow they'll take up the rest. But again, so it's mentioned that the worship of the demigods and different benefits that one gets from doing different sacrifices are mentioned in the Vedic literature, but they're not the summum bonum. Even when we read through Nectar of Devotion, we can read different, what do you call, Falashruti, or different benefits that one gets from taking just Charanamrita or from wearing the Mahapashadam of the garland of the Lord. You get different benefits, relief from diseases and different. But Srila Rupa Goswami explains in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that those benefits are not the ultimate benefit that's there. Those benefits are often put there for those of us who still need a little bit of motivation to do things. We're not on the platform of just spontaneous loving devotion, not quite just yet. And we need a little motivation. Okay, let me come and see the deity because I'll get spiritual benefit. Let me come and offer my obeisances to Srila Prabhupada because I'll get, a certain result. Let me take the Charanamrita of the Lord because besides the fact that I know it's good for me to do that, there's a benefit from doing that. But the real benefit of performing all of these acts of bhakti, especially these acts that are directly connected to the bhakti yoga process, are so that the heart becomes cleansed, the mind and the consciousness becomes cleansed, and we're able to fix the cleansed heart and mind on the loving service of the personality of Godhead. That's the real benefit that we're looking for. And therefore, our verse started off with the phrase, Etavam eva yajatam. Etavam eva. This Etavam eva, it talks about different categories of people. In this verse, it's translated, the word for word, all these different kinds of worshipers, and eva is certainly. So it's comparing, again, those first 9 verses, all those different kinds of worshipers, they get benefit from worshiping the demigods, but the ultimate benefit is performed by engaging in the Lord's service. So that Etavan Eva, that's my point, is mentioned in various verses in the Bhagavatam. For example, in the 3rd canto, 25th chapter, that's Lord Kapila Dev talking to Devahuti. In the 44th verse, it's Etavan Eva Lokeshmin Pumsam Nishre Yasodaya. Again, Yasodaya is also there. Yasoda is fame. Tivrena, fixed. Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Manyo Maya Pritam Shtiram. Therefore, persons whose mind are fixed on the Lord engage in the intensive practices of devotional service. That is the only means for attainment of the final perfection of life. And there's a couple of other quotes. Okay, in the 6th canto, again, it's brought, because the Bhagavatam will go through just like 2nd canto, 10th chapter, 1st verse, I mentioned about the 10 subject matters of the Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam will talk about different subjects in relation to Krishna, and then it will come usually with a concise definition of what's going on. So 6th canto, 3rd chapter, 22nd verse. Etavan eva lokesmin pumsam dharma parasmita bhakti yoga bhagavati tannama grahanadibi. And again, focusing in. So many things are being said, but focus in. Devotional service, beginning with chanting of the holy name of the Lord, is the ultimate religious principle for the living entity in the human society. And then in the 7th canto, a similar verse is there when Prahlad's speaking to his little classmates when he's still in school. Etavan eva lokesmin pumsam sarvata parasmrita ekantir bhaktir govinde yat sarvatra tat ikshanam. In this material world, to render service to the lotus feet of Govinda, the cause of all causes, and to see him everywhere is the only goal of life. This much alone is the ultimate goal of human life, as explained by all the revealed scriptures. So this, again, that theme of presenting so much various information, various choices, various paths, and also explaining different personalities who had difficulty along the path and what results they had from their difficulty, but then bringing it all back to focus in. Yes, all of that is there, and there's just like 6th canto, starting off with Parikshit Maharaj's question after hearing Sukadeva Goswami describe previously about the different hellish planets. Sukadeva Maharaj Parikshit brings it into perspective. He says, how can people avoid that, visiting the hellish planets and that constant suffering repeatedly again? And then the whole story of Ajamil is explained gradually, how by chant that the highest goal of life is achieved easily, in comparative to everything else, easily if one focuses in on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise, all these huge endeavors, like Srila Prabhupada mentioned today in the purport, all the huge endeavors that people make, either by worshiping the demigods or in an atheistic and godless sense by material scientific advancement of technology, still leave one far from the ultimate goal that one wants to achieve. One wants to achieve peace and happiness and serenity and a comfortable life. And Srimad Bhagavatam says, wake up, sleeping soul. It ain't going to happen here. It's not going to happen here in the material world. It's just like thinking, I've said this before, but you guys are probably a new audience, so it's just like putting your dinner in the refrigerator and thinking that it's going to cook in there. But it's not designed, the refrigerator is not designed for that purpose. You got to get the right appliance in your kitchen to do the right thing. The refrigerator can cool the things, the oven can heat the things, etc., etc. You put it in the right place, you'll get the right result. If you put your dinner in the refrigerator, you're going to wait a long time, unless you're having raw vegetables. Okay, sorry. But anyway, so in the material world, thinking, well, I'll make this arrangement, I'll make air conditioning, I'll make heating for the winter, I'll make a cell phone for everybody. Everyone can carry 2 cell phones, one for each hand, or whatever, and then I'll be really happy and I'll be really connected and I'll be peaceful. It's not going to happen like that, because the material world is designed for our suffering. Then just one other point, in the Sanskrit of the text, Bhagavat achalo bhavo yad bhagavat tasangata, that spontaneous attraction, unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can be attained only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. That's our means of hope. Otherwise there's no hope for getting out of the entanglement by doing more activities. I'll get unentangled by doing a sacrifice to the demigods to get me unentangled. It's not going to happen that way. But by the association of the pure devotee, which comes from outside the realm of the material existence, but it pierces the illusion in the heart, and that's glorified. All that association of the pure devotee is glorified throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, and in fact, that was the whole one of the main focuses. Vyasadeva was expressing his despondency after compiling all the Vedic literature. He was still a little unsatisfied with that huge endeavor and the results of that endeavor. Narada Muni told him right off the bat, he told him, okay, the reason that you're dissatisfied is because you didn't focus in on glorification of the Supreme Lord and his devotees. And that literature which glorifies the Supreme Lord and his devotees and the potency of the devotees, to give the conditioned soul the opportunity to start the process of bhakti yoga, that's the only thing that's going to fully satisfy the self. So that's glorified over and over, as in Chaitanya Charitamrita, 22nd chapter, in the Madhya Lila, 22nd chapter, text 54, very famous verse, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastrakaya, Lava Mantra. It doesn't take a lot of time. Lava Mantra, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. The verdict of all revealed scriptures is that even a moment's association with the pure devotee, a moment, one can attain all success. So we can say a moment very casually, but of course Bhagavatam has a very precise definition of what that measurement of that moment, 1/11 of a second, Sadhu Sangha. 1/11 of a second association with the pure devotee has the potency to change the course of your eternal life. Eternally nitya baddha, eternally conditioned in the material world, can be completely changed to point in the direction of nitya siddha, nitya baddha, nitya prema, whatever, to point towards the perfection. 1/11 of a second. Amazing, huh? So, yeah. Oh, here's another one. This is kind of applies, and then this will be the last one. This is from the 4th canto, 30th chapter. Even a moment's association with the pure devotee cannot be compared to being transferred to the heavenly planets, or even merging into the Brahman effulgence in complete liberation. For living entities who are destined to give up the body and die, association with the pure devotees is the highest benediction. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We can associate with him through the devotees by hearing and reading and chanting, etc., etc. Discussions or clarifications or comments or anything? Abhigya Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji, for very nice class.
Thank you for always having so many questions.
So from beginning stage, like where you are totally absorbed in the material enjoyment, to the highest platform, I think most of us are in the transitional stage. So in that transitional stage, do we get any nectar? I don't get any taste, looks like. But looks like I'm getting it, that's why I'm here. But sometimes I feel like, I'm leaving that material enjoyment, still not getting that taste or happiness. So that happiness is still, that search is still on. So what's happening?
What's happening is natural process is happening. It's not unusual. The natural process, the acharyas have described the journey of the soul. They've described it, mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. How does it start? It starts with a little faith, adau shraddha. So we hear something, we get a little faith, and therefore we can see, oh, okay, I'm not on this platform that's been mentioned here in the Bhagavatam, but it does make sense, doesn't it? When Srila Prabhupada explains how the material world is just an ocean of suffering and you can't get out of it, blah, 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 it makes sense. It makes sense when we hear that there's a Supreme Lord controlling everything, and if we dovetail, or if we dovetail ourselves to please Him, then everything will, that makes sense. So we start with a little faith, ado shraddha. And then because of there's faith, then we come and associate. We try to hear more. We associate with the Lord. That's part of the process. Bhajana kriya, and we take to it a little more serious. So perhaps now that you have a little more facility to hear more regularly, then your faith is growing. You're not perfect just yet, but you're almost perfect. You know what I mean? Not perfection right there, but it's growing. And then there's a long stretch. It's called anartha nivritti. That anartha nivritti, where it means that we give up the unwanted habits. We give up our, we have to cleanse the heart. But after that long stage, and here's the thing, there's just so many, it's so nicely described throughout the Vedic literature. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 19, starting 19 to 23, that this is described nicely, the process of devotional service. Okay, I was going to say, I forget what I was going to say, where the process, the cleansing of the heart, oh yeah, thank you, Krishna. It might seem like it's taking a long time, right? You've been doing it for a few months now and maybe not feeling the most ecstatic results. Some of us have been doing it for a few decades now, and we're not also at a very high level. But there's progress being made. And the more that we hear from the Bhagavatam, and the more that we hear of a real position. In other words, it's not that we can get free instant. It happens that people can get free instantaneously, but it's not the normal course of action. The normal course of action is that it's a gradual process. And the more that we understand how long our contamination in the material world has been, not just a few, we think it's been a few, I've been around for a few lifetimes, right? We think in all humility. We've been around for a few billion lifetimes. That's also a little off too. That's not also accurate. The one in Brahma Samhita, the Lord's, the process of creation is described very exactly. And the pores that emanate from Mahavishnu, that they grow into universes and then develop, etc. And the universes have innumerable planets in them, and there's millions of pores and millions of universes, right? And all of the whole duration of one of those universes, do you remember from our Brahma Samhita recitation? One breath of Mahavishnu. One breath. So we've been around for a few breaths of Mahavishnu. And, you know, so in other words, our concept of how long we've been in the material world and how easy it should be to cleanse the heart of the contamination, that gets more in perspective the more the heart becomes cleansed. In the beginning it thinks, I've been doing this now for 3 months, and it should, you know what I mean? Just like, and we could see, if you took the example of like your son when he was just 5 years old. How old is he now, 14 or so? Okay. So when he was just 4 years old or 5 years old, just entering first grade in school, you know, if he's just, you know, throwing a tantrum crying, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a doctor. Now, an adult looking at that child will say, isn't he cute? You know what I mean? He doesn't understand. You can become a doctor. First learn your ABCs, first learn how to count, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What to speak of mathematics, et cetera. So we can look at that and say, oh, he doesn't understand. That's our position. We're I'm thinking, I want to be pure. I chanted Hare Krishna, even though I didn't think of Krishna while I was chanting, but I've been chanting for 3 months now, and even, you know what I mean? Why aren't I there? It takes a while. But you're encouraged, we're feeling encouraged along the way. You know, it's not that, okay, like, have you ever had the experience of eating raw oatmeal? It's a little dry, right? But if you keep chewing it, it gets a little more moist, gradually. It's not recommended, but anyway, I'm just saying. You know, so at the beginning, the process of devotional service is a little dry, but there is taste there, and therefore one feels encouraged to continue, and that's the point. Stita D, what would you like to add? Stita D's jumping out of his skin.
Yeah, you mentioned about the kid being a doctor, and it brought back this Maya memory. I was like 4, talking to my mom how I'd have to go to school, and it's like, how long is that? Like, you know, is it like an afternoon or something?
Yeah.
And, oh, well, it's like 6 years, 12 years, and then you go to college, and so we're talking like 15, 20 years, and I'm like 4.
Right.
And it's like, that's eternal. It's never going to happen. It's never going to be over.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking back,
Right.
and it's like so long ago, it's like it never happened.
Right.
You know, so time's a funny thing. But
That's a good point. Thanks for that. That's a really practical thing. Can I just add before, don't forget what you're going to say, but just add another experience we had when we were in school, when it was summer break, right? Remember when you were in grammar school or something? Summer break was so long. Oh my God, I'm so bored. And now summer break is like, oh, you know, okay, sorry. It's relative.